Welcome back to Stories X. A lone FBI director, a racist cop, and a briefcase that's more than meets the eye, all tangled in a conspiracy that'll leave you guessing. Picture a dark highway, a high-stakes showdown, and secrets that could change everything. Trust me, you won't want to miss a second of this. If you're hooked already, smash that like button. Let's hit 39 likes before we dive in, because this story deserves all the love. Ready? Here we go. Highway 62 unfurled like a dark ribbon through silent hills, swallowed by a moonless night where only faint stars pierced the black. The low hum of a sleek black SUV cut through the stillness. John Carter, FBI director, gripped the wheel, his sharp eyes fixed on the road. His rugged, brown face showed no emotion, a mask honed by years in the field. His hands were steady, but his mind wandered elsewhere. In the back, a black briefcase that's strapped tight with special belts, still as stone. To Carter, it was no mere object. Inside were classified files, secrets that could unravel national security and global ties. Reinforced with biometric locks and bulletproof casing, its security system could strike at any intruder. It was a silent sentinel, heavy with peril. Carter drove steadily, not out of caution, but to think. Hours ago, at FBI headquarters, Agent Sarah Miller, his trusted deputy, had called, voice tense. Director, intel says you're being watched. That briefcase makes this too risky to go alone. She'd pushed hard, but Carter, calm as ever, replied, I get it, Sarah, but we can't wait for backup. I'll handle it. She'd sighed, reluctant. Be careful. I'll track you remotely. He hadn't told her about the unease prickling his spine, an instinct he trusted. The SUV glided through empty stretches, headlights carving the mist. The silence wasn't peace. It was a warning. Carter glanced at the rearview mirror. Far off, headlights flickered, trailing him. He slowed, testing. The car matched him, then surged forward, lights blinding in the mirror. It ran parallel briefly. Carter saw only a shadow through tinted glass, then dropped back, lights off, gone. He exhaled. This wasn't chance. The briefcase was a beacon. He refocused, but soon red and blue lights flashed behind him, a siren slicing the dark. A patrol car signaled him to stop. Carter's gut tightened. The insignia was off, the approach sloppy. A late-night stop here, with what he carried, spelled trouble. Ignoring it would worsen things. He signaled, pulling over, gravel crunching. Hands on the wheel, he watched the tall, white female officer step out, striding arrogantly. Her blonde hair was cropped short, her face sharp. Her nameplate read, Bradley Cooper. She approached, flashlight blazing into Carter's eyes. He lowered the window an inch. What's the issue, officer? He asked, voice steady but firm. Cooper's gaze flicked to the briefcase, a smirk forming. License and registration. Now, she snapped cold. Carter pulled his wallet, handing over the papers. Why the stop? He pressed. She flipped through them, eyes on the case. Speeding, she said flat. He knew it was a lie, but stayed quiet. She returned the documents, pointing back. What's in there? Open it. Carter's tone hardened. Federal property, classified. You've got no authority. She laughed, sharp. My turf, my rules. Open it or I will. He breathed deep. It's got a security system. Try it and you'll regret it. Call your boss. Her smirk widened. We'll see, she said, heading to her car, hand on her radio. Carter watched, cold. This wasn't routine. Something bigger loomed. The night pressed heavier as Officer Bradley Cooper stood by her patrol car, her radio crackling with static. The beam of her flashlight bobbed in the dark, cutting sharp angles across the gravel shoulder of Highway 62. John Carter sat still in his SUV, his hand steady on the wheel, but his mind raced. The air felt thick, charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. Cooper's arrogance wasn't just bravado. It hinted at something deeper, something orchestrated. He glanced at the briefcase, its glossy surface reflecting the faint red-blue glow of her patrol lights. It was a magnet for trouble, and he knew it. Cooper's voice drifted back, clipped and smug, as she spoke into her radio. Got a guy here with a fancy case. Says it's federal. I'm checking it out. Carter couldn't hear the reply, but her posture stiffened, then relaxed, a predator sizing up prey. She turned, her boots crunching gravel, and strode back to his window. The flashlight snapped on again, blinding him momentarily. "You say this is federal property?" she asked, her tone dripping sarcasm. "What's inside? Secrets, cash, or something dirtier?" Carter kept his cool, eyes steady. "Classified, like I said, beyond your jurisdiction. Back off." She chuckled, a hollow sound that echoed in the quiet. "Classified, huh? Sounds like a movie line. I don't buy it." She stepped closer, peering at the briefcase. "You think I'm scared of your little warning? Let's see what happens." "Last chance, Cooper," Carter said, voice low, steel beneath the calm. "That case will defend itself." "You'll lose." Her smirk faltered for a split second, then returned, sharper. "Lose? I'm the law here. Sit tight." She moved to the rear door, flashlight trained on the case. Carter's grip tightened. He'd warned her. Protocol demanded it, but he knew she wouldn't listen. Her hand hovered over the latch, fingers twitching with defiance. A faint hiss escaped the briefcase as she pressed the release. Then, crack! A bolt of electricity arced out, blue, white, and vicious. Cooper shrieked, her body jerking as the shock ripped through her. The flashlight clattered to the ground, its beam spinning wildly across the gravel. She convulsed once more, then crumpled, a heap of scorched uniform and stunned silence. The briefcase erupted into a shrill alarm, red lights flashing on its surface, painting the night in frantic pulses. Carter didn't hesitate. He shoved his door open and stepped out, boots hitting the ground hard. The air smelled of ozone and burnt fabric. Cooper twitched, groaning, her sleeves smoldering. He scanned her, alive but out cold, then froze. In the distance, headlights blinked, faint but steady, about 200 yards off. Not police, not FBI, just there, idling, watching. His pulse quickened. This wasn't a lone rogue cop. Something bigger was unfolding. He pulled his phone, dialing fast. "This is Director John Carter," he said when the line picked up, voice clipped. "Highway 62, 10 miles east of exit 19. Interference confirmed. Send a high-security team, now." The headlights blinked once more. Then the mystery car's engine growled, turning away slow and deliberate, melting into the dark. Carter's jaw tightened. A message, maybe, or a retreat. Cooper stirred, coughing, her face pale with shock and fury. "You set me up," she rasped, clutching her burn arm. "Assaulting an officer, you'll pay." Carter crouched beside her, voice icy. "I warned you. You trespassed on federal property. This is on you." She glared, but her trembling legs betrayed her. She collapsed again, gasping. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. FBI backup closing in. Carter stood, eyes on the horizon where the strange car had vanished. The briefcase's alarm shrieked on, a relentless warning. He thought of Sarah's call, the intel about surveillance. This wasn't random. The case, its contents. They'd drawn predators out of shadows. A black SUV screeched to a halt, followed by others. Doors flew open and tactical agents spilled out, rifles slung, movements precise. Sarah Miller led them, her tall frame cutting through the chaos, hair tied back, eyes sharp. "Director," she called, scanning the scene. "You okay?" He nodded, pointing to Cooper and the still flashing case. Security system triggered. She wouldn't listen. Sarah's gaze hardened as she eyed Cooper, now slumped against the gravel. Pride shattered. "What the hell happened here?" she demanded. Carter's voice was grim. "More than we thought. There was another car, watching. This isn't just her." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "You think she's a pawn?" Carter didn't answer, but the weight in his stare said enough. The night wasn't over, and the real threat was still out there. The highway pulsed with tension as FBI agents swarmed the scene, their boots kicking up dust under the flickering red and blue lights. The briefcase's alarm had finally been silenced, but its red glow lingered, casting an eerie sheen across the gravel. John Carter stood beside his SUV, arms crossed, his calm exterior masking the storm brewing within. The night air carried a sharp bite, tinged with the acrid scent of Cooper's scorched uniform. Officer Bradley Cooper sat propped against a patrol car, pale and trembling, her blonde hair plastered to her sweat-slicked forehead. Her burned arm hung limp, blisters blooming under the torn sleeve. She glared at Carter, defiance warring with pain in her eyes. Sarah Miller paced nearby, her sharp gaze darting between Cooper and the horizon where the mystery car had vanished. "This is a mess," she muttered, then turned to Carter. "You're sure about that other vehicle?" He nodded, voice low. "It wasn't random. Stationary, observing. Then it bolted when I called for backup. Someone's pulling strings." Sarah's jaw tightened. She waved an agent over. "Check her phone," she ordered, pointing at Cooper. "Every call, every text, last few hours. Now." Cooper's head snapped up, her voice hoarse but venomous. "You've got no right." Sarah cut her off, stepping closer, her tone like a blade. "You lost that argument when you tampered with federal property, officer. Explain yourself, or we'll dig it out ourselves." Cooper's lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes dropping to the ground. She said nothing, but the flicker of panic in her expression didn't escape Carter. An agent approached with a tablet, his voice clipped. "Director, we've got initial data from the briefcase's security system. It recorded everything." Carter and Sarah huddled over the screen. The footage showed Cooper's smug approach, her hand on the latch, then the shock, her collapse. But Carter's attention snagged on the background, those distant headlights, steady as a predator's stare. "There," he said, pointing. "That's no coincidence." Sarah nodded. "We're tracing traffic cams in a 10-mile radius. If that car moved, we'll find it." Carter's mind churned. The briefcase wasn't just a target. It was bait, and Cooper had bitten. But who'd cast a line? He glanced at her, slumped and silent. "She's not the mastermind," he said quietly. "Too reckless. Someone fed her this play." Sarah arched a brow. "You think she's a puppet?" He didn't reply, but the pieces were aligning, too neatly to be chance. Another vehicle rolled up, lights flashing but siren off. A woman stepped out, Lieutenant Jessica Ramirez, local precinct brass. Her dark hair was pulled tight, her face etched with authority and strain. She strode over, eyes sweeping the chaos, landing on Cooper. "Officer Cooper," she barked, voice cutting the night. "What the hell did you do?" Cooper looked up, defiance fading to shame. "I thought it was suspicious," she mumbled. "Just doing my job." Ramirez's laugh was bitter. "Your job? You overstepped federal jurisdiction because a briefcase looked suspicious." She turned to Carter and Sarah. "Director, Agent Miller, my apologies. This isn't how we operate. I'll launch a full investigation." Carter nodded, voice even. "Appreciated, Lieutenant, but this isn't just her. She may have been pushed." Ramirez frowned. "Pushed? By who?" Before Carter could answer, Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then handed it to him, her face grim. "You need to see this." The screen showed a shaky video. Cooper's attempt on the briefcase, the shock, the collapse, all caught from a distance. A headline blared. "Police trespass on FBI property. Truth or conspiracy?" Comments scrolled fast. Outrage, speculation. Thousands of views in minutes. "It's viral," Sarah said. "Someone's stirring the pot." Carter's stomach sank. The leak wasn't accidental. It was a flare, signaling bigger players. "We can't stop it," he said, handing the phone back. "But we can control it. Draft a statement. FBI confirms a violation. Investigation underway. No room for twists." Sarah nodded, typing fast. "This'll draw eyes, domestic, foreign. If that case holds what I think, we're exposed." He didn't argue. The documents inside, counterintelligence ops, agent names, were dynamite. If they fell into the wrong hands, lives would burn. He turned to Ramirez. "Cooper's not clean. Check her contacts. Someone behind this." Ramirez's eyes narrowed. "If she's dirty, I'll bury her myself." She faced Cooper, voice ice. "You've got one shot to talk. Who told you to do this?" Cooper's gaze darted. Ramirez, Carter, Sarah, then dropped. "No one," she whispered. "I acted alone." Ramirez scoffed. "We'll see." She signaled her team. "Take her in." Full debrief. Cooper staggered up, legs shaky, escorted to patrol car. Carter watched, unconvinced. Her silence screamed lies. Sarah stepped closer, voice low. "That video's not just public bait. It's a beacon. Hades' network could be watching." Carter's eyes darkened. He'd tangled with them before, a shadowy syndicate trafficking secrets. "If they're in this, it's war," he said. "Get that phone data. And the car, find it." She nodded, barking orders to the team. The agents dispersed, some scouring the scene, others pulling traffic feeds. Carter stood alone for a moment, the night closing in. The strange car's headlights haunted him, a ghost in the dark, taunting. He thought of Sarah's warning, the email he'd get later. "Be careful who you trust." Doubt gnawed at him. Was this an outside strike, or a betrayal from within? A rustle broke his thoughts. An agent waved him over. "Sir, the briefcase audio picked up something." Cooper got a call right before. Unknown voice, not local PD. Carter's pulse spiked. "Play it." The agent tapped the tablet. Static crackled, then a deep voice. "Check the case, Bradley. Could be your big break." The call cut off. Carter's fist clenched. "That's no cop," he said. "Run it through analysis. I want a name." Sarah joined him, catching the tail end. "Directed hit?" she asked. He nodded. "She's a tool. The question is, who's holding the leash?" The highway stretched silent again, but the air buzzed with unseen threats. Carter felt it. The game had shifted, and the shadows were closing in. The FBI press room buzzed with restless energy, a hive of reporters crammed into rows of chairs, cameras poised like vultures. The air smelled of coffee and sweat, thick with anticipation. John Carter stepped to the podium, his dark suit crisp against a muted gray backdrop. His face was a mask of calm, but his eyes, sharp and unyielding, swept the crowd, locking onto the lenses broadcasting his every word. Behind him, Sarah Miller stood silent, her posture rigid, hands clasped. The weight of the night's chaos pressed on them both. Carter cleared his throat, voice deep and steady. "Thank you for being here. Last night, on Highway 62, a local officer breached federal jurisdiction, attempting to access an FBI-protected briefcase. Its security system activated, and the incident is under investigation." He paused, letting the words sink in. The room so quiet you could hear pen scratching. This isn't just one person's mistake. It's a reminder law enforcement, from local to federal, must uphold responsibility and professionalism. The FBI won't tolerate threats to national security, no matter the source. A hand shot up, a grizzled journalist from a big paper. Carter nodded. "Director, some say this wasn't random. Is that briefcase, or you, a target in a larger conspiracy?" Whispers rippled through the crowd. Carter's gaze didn't waver. "I can't disclose details yet," he said, measured but firm. "But we're exploring every angle. No threat will go unchecked." The answer hung heavy, hinting at depths he wouldn't reveal. Another reporter piped up. "The video's gone viral. Public's furious. Your thoughts?" Carter leaned forward slightly. "They're right to be upset. Trust in law enforcement is sacred. We'll investigate fully, hold the guilty accountable, and use this to strengthen the system, not just punish one officer." Applause broke out, sharp and sudden. He raised a hand, silencing it. "Justice isn't revenge. It's reform. We're committed to that." He stepped back, exchanging a glance with Sarah as they left the stage. Her eyes mirrored his, resolute but wary. Outside, in the dim hallway, she spoke low. "That video's a wildfire. It's not just outrage, it's a signal." Carter nodded, the strange car's headlights flashing in his mind. Someone wanted out there, to flush us out or smoke out their real target. Back at headquarters, Carter's temporary office was a fortress of screens and files. The briefcase sat on his desk, a black monolith under the desk lamp's glow. Sarah burst in, tablet in hand, face tight. "We traced that car," she said. "Registered to a shell company. links to Hades' network. Carter's got twisted. He knew them. Thieves of secrets, ghosts in the digital dark. The syndicate? He asked, voice low. She nodded, pulling up a file. Smuggling intel, cyber hits. First time they've aimed this high. He stared at the logo, a jagged H in red. Cooper's call, and he hits? Sarah scrolled. Unknown number, minutes before she moved on you. Matches Hades' patterns. Carter's fist clenched. They played her. Used her bias to crack the case open. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Why this case, though? What's inside worth their attention? He hesitated, then said, counterintelligence ops, agent names, locations. If they get it, our people die. Her face paled. A mole, she whispered. Carter's jaw tightened. Maybe. How else did they know my route? Silence fell, heavy as lead. He stood, pacing to the window. City lights glittered below, a maze of hidden threats. We hit back, he said. Dig into Cooper's life. Every contact. Track Hades, forced their hand. Sarah nodded, resolute. This is war, isn't it? He turned, eyes cold. Always has been. The room stilled. The briefcase a silent witness. Carter felt it. The noose tightening. Hades wasn't just hunting secrets. They were hunting him, and he'd be damned if they won. The late-night hush of FBI headquarters wrapped around John Carter's office like a shroud. Dim light spilled from a desk lamp, casting long shadows over scattered files in the ever-present briefcase, its black surface gleaming like obsidian. Carter sat hunched over his laptop, replaying the briefcase's footage for the 10th time. Cooper's collapse, the shock's blue arc, the distant headlights. They looped in his mind, each frame a puzzle piece refusing to fit. The city outside glittered through the window, a deceptive calm masking the storm he knew was coming. His phone buzzed, shattering the silence. An email notification blinked. No subject, no sender. He opened it, eyes narrowing at the stark words. Be careful who you trust. A chill snaked down his spine. The message was a dagger, brief, sharp, and anonymous. Only someone with serious skill could breach FBI security like this. He leaned back, staring at the screen. Hades' network? Or closer, someone inside? The thought gnawed at him, a splinter he couldn't pull. Footsteps broke his reverie. Sarah Miller entered, her face drawn, a stack of printouts in hand. We've got something, she said, voice tight. Cooper's phone. Call logs confirm a burner number tied to Hades. And the car? Spotted on a traffic cam 20 miles out, heading toward a known drop point. Carter's pulse quickened. They're moving fast, he said, standing. What about the voice? She handed him a transcript. Audio's processed. Mailed distorted, but he called her Bradley. Knew her. Said, check the case, it's your shot. She wasn't random. They picked her. Carter scanned the lines, his jaw tightening. Her bias made her perfect. A loose cannon they could aim. Sarah nodded. She's still clamming up, but Ramirez is cracking her now. He paced, mind racing. The briefcase held counterintelligence gold, agent identities, ops in play. If Hades cracked it, the fallout would be blood. We've got a leak, he said, voice low. That email, someone's too close. Sarah's eyes widened. Inside the bureau? He didn't answer, but the weight in his stare said enough. Double security. He ordered, traced that email. Every angle. She nodded, then hesitated. The video's at 10 million views. Public screaming conspiracy. Some think you're hiding more. Carter smirked faintly. Good. Let them watch. It'll flush the rats out. He turned to the window, city lights winking like eyes in the dark. Hades wasn't just after secrets. They wanted chaos, and he'd give them a fight instead. A knock interrupted. An agent poked his head in. Director, Ramirez sent this. Cooper's talking. Carter took the file, flipping it open. Cooper's statement was messy, scrawled in haste. Got a call. Guy said I'd be a hero if I checked it. Didn't say who he was. Carter's got twisted. She's a pawn, he said. Hades dangled glory and she bit. Sarah crossed her arms. Explains her ego trip. But who's the voice? Carter closed the file, eyes cold. We'll find him. Hades thinks they've got us cornered. Let's turn the board. He grabbed his coat. Get the team. We hit that drop point now. Sarah's face hardened with resolve. On it. The night swallowed them as they rolled out, a convoy cutting through fog-draped streets. Carter sat shotgun, the briefcase beside him, its weight a constant reminder. The drop point loomed, a derelict warehouse by the river, windows shattered, shadows thick. They killed the lights, fanning out silent as ghosts. Carter's breath fogged in the chill, his hand resting near his holster. A flicker, movement inside. Then a glint, headlights faint, retreating fast. They're here, he whispered into his comms. Move. The team surged, boots pounding, but the car peeled away, tires screaming into the dark. Carter cursed under his breath. Close, but not enough. Back at base, he stood alone, staring at the briefcase. Hades had slipped through, but the game wasn't over. That email echoed. Be careful who you trust. He'd root them out, outside or in. The city slept, but Carter's war burned bright. Justice wasn't just duty, it was his vow.